Most people believe they understand why they're not getting ahead financially. The explanation usually sounds familiar. Income isn't high enough, prices keep rising, saving feels impossible, and everything feels tighter than it used to. And while those things are real, they're not the full picture. For a lot of normal people, the real issue isn't laziness, poor discipline, or bad habits. It's one large, normalized expense that quietly absorbs future wealth before it ever has a chance to grow. And that expense is transportation, specifically cars. Cars aren't the problem because they're unnecessary. For most people, they're essential. The problem is that cars are treated like a routine lifestyle upgrade instead of what they actually are, one of the most expensive financial decisions an average person will make outside of housing. What makes this especially dangerous is that car costs don't feel extreme. They're broken into manageable-looking pieces, a monthly payment, insurance, fuel, maintenance, and each one seems reasonable on its own. But when combined, they create a long-term financial drag most people never fully calculate. Modern car ownership is fundamentally different from what it was even 10 years ago. Vehicle prices are higher, interest rates are higher, loan terms are longer, insurance costs have increased, and people are now financing depreciation at a scale that would have sounded irresponsible not that long ago. Today, a completely normal car payment can easily be $600, $700, or even $800 a month without the car being luxury, performance-based, or excessive in any obvious way. Because those payments are spread over 5, 6, or even 7 years, people normalize them instead of questioning them. The monthly number feels survivable, so the long-term cost becomes invisible. But monthly payments hide the real impact. The true cost of a car isn't what leaves your bank account each month, it's what the car quietly prevents you from doing financially. When a large portion of income is locked into a depreciating asset, flexibility disappears. Emergency savings grow slowly. Investing becomes inconsistent. Opportunities feel risky instead of accessible. Two people can earn the same income, live similar lives, and make one different decision about cars and end up in completely different financial positions 10 years later, not because one was smarter or worked harder, but because the math worked differently in the background. A modest, responsible car financed at today's rates, insured properly, fueled regularly, and maintained normally, can easily cost $8,000 to $10,000 per year when everything is included. That's not luxury ownership, that's average ownership. Over 10 years, that single decision can quietly approach or exceed 6 figures, and that money doesn't just disappear. It represents lost opportunity, money that could have built a buffer, reduced stress, or compounded into something meaningful over time. This is where most personal finance advice breaks down for normal people. Many popular voices built wealth during periods of cheaper cars, lower interest rates, rising asset prices, and shorter loan terms, so their advice assumes conditions that no longer exist. Telling people to simply invest more while ignoring the structural cost of transportation is unrealistic when income is average and expenses are fixed. For many households today, transportation is the second largest expense after housing, yet it receives far less scrutiny. Housing decisions are debated endlessly because the cost is obvious and unavoidable. Car decisions, on the other hand, are often justified emotionally and defended financially afterward. Cars are marketed as rewards, symbols of progress, proof that you're moving forward in life. When your income increases slightly, upgrading your car feels reasonable, even responsible, because everyone around you does the same thing. But financially, cars behave very differently from the things people associate with long-term success. They lose value immediately, require constant spending, and almost never create future leverage or income. This doesn't mean owning a car is a mistake. That's unrealistic for most people. The real issue is scale and timing. When transportation costs consume too much of your income too early, they create pressure no amount of budgeting can fully solve. You can optimize groceries, cancel subscriptions, and cut discretionary spending, but if thousands of dollars every year are locked into depreciation and interest, real progress stays slow. This is why so many people feel like they're doing everything right, but still falling behind. They're not failing financially, they're carrying costs that quietly cap their upside. The most damaging part is that this often happens during the exact years when financial momentum matters most. Early and mid-career years are when small differences compound the hardest. Money invested early has more time to grow. Mistakes made early are harder to undo, and fixed costs chosen early can shape decades of outcomes. When a large portion of early income is committed to expensive transportation, it doesn't just slow progress temporarily, it reshapes the entire trajectory. What makes this even more complicated is that cars feel justified by necessity. People don't buy cars thinking they're making a financial mistake. They buy them because they need reliability, safety, convenience, and time. Those are real needs. The problem is that the market has blurred the line between necessity and excess so effectively that it's hard to tell where one ends and the other begins. A car that meets basic needs and a car that quietly drains wealth can look very similar on the surface. The difference isn't always the model or brand, it's the financing structure, the timing, and how much of your income the total cost consumes. A car that's affordable on paper can still be expensive in reality if it limits everything else you're trying to build. This is why the question isn't, can I afford the payment, but what does this payment cost me long term? Most people never ask that question because the trade-off isn't immediate. Nothing breaks, nothing feels urgent. Life continues, but the cost shows up later as slower progress, missed opportunities, and financial stress that feels hard to explain. Over time, people internalize that stress as personal failure instead of structural pressure. They assume they're bad with money, even when they're doing what society considers normal. That's the quiet trap. Normal decisions can still produce limiting outcomes when the environment changes. The goal of realistic personal finance isn't to eliminate enjoyment or live in deprivation. It's to understand which decisions quietly control the ceiling of your financial life. Transportation is one of those decisions, not because cars are evil, but because their costs compound in the background while delivering less and less long-term value. When transportation is kept in proportion to income, financial breathing room appears. Savings become consistent. Investing feels less risky and stress decreases. Progress becomes visible. That's not because of discipline or hustle. It's because the system has space to work. This is what most financial conversations miss. Wealth building isn't just what you do with extra money. It's about how much space your fixed costs leave for growth. And for many normal people, the single biggest factor controlling that space isn't coffee, vacations, or small spending habits. It's the car sitting in their driveway, quietly shaping their financial future every single month.